Good morning and welcome to the September 2023 board meeting held in public of the NHS Sussex ICB Board, or NHS Sussex as we prefer to call ourselves. My name is Stephen Lightfoot, I'm the chair of the board and my role is to guide us through today's agenda. Now, by way of introduction, I'd just like to remind everyone that this is a board meeting held in public and it is not a public meeting. As a result, I will only be taking questions from board members during the meeting. Although I will provide an opportunity for the board to answer pre-submitted questions from members of the public before we close the meeting. I also need to make you aware that we're recording the meeting today, so we can publish it on our website for members of the public, our partners and our staff to observe at the time of their choosing. Now, before we go any further, I'd just like to go around the table and ask everyone to introduce themselves with their name and their job role for the benefit of everyone watching. So as I said, my name is Stephen Lightfoot and I'm the chair of the board.
Morning, I'm Adam Doyle, I'm the Chief Executive Officer at NHS Sussex.
Kerry Overland's Governance Officer, taking minutes.
Morning everyone, I'm Deb Austin, Director of Tourism Services at Brighton and City Council at Monmouth.
Good morning, Faustina by Interim and Executive Director.
Morning all, Mark Flint, Chief People Officer for NHS Sussex.
Morning, Joan Chadwick-Bell, Chief Executive at East Sussex Healthcare, NHS Trust and Partner.
I'm Ian Gaia, Chief Primary Care Officer for NHS Sussex.
Morning everyone, I'm Mark Staton, Director of Adult Social Care and Health for the East Sussex County Council and partner member.
Morning everybody, Alison Cannon, the Chief Nursing Officer for NHS Sussex.
Hello everybody, my name's Tom Gurney, I'm the Chief Communications Officer for NHS Sussex.
Morning, I'm Ash Surney, I'm a Non-Executive Director and Chair of the Workforce and Remuneration Committee.
Morning, John Hamilton, Chief Finance Officer for NHS Sussex.
Morning, I'm Rani Dillon, I'm a GP and Clinical Chair of the West Sussex Primary Care Police.
Morning, Chloe Griffith, Chief Delivery Officer for NHS Sussex.
Paul King, Non-Executive Director and Chair of Audit and Risk Management Committee.
Good morning, Lisa Emery, Chief Transformation and Innovation and Digital Officer for NHS Sussex. Good morning, I'm Alison Challenger, the Director of Public Health for the Sussex County Council and member.
Morning everyone, I'm Sue Marshall, I'm a Non-Executive Director and Chair of the Patient Experience Committee.
Good morning, Jack Flight, I'm Director of Governance and Assurance and NHS Sussex.
Great, thank you colleagues, I appreciate that. Now, just as far as the agenda is concerned, we've got some apologies today. We've got apologies from Louise Ansari, who's our Non-Executive Chair of the Population Outcomes Committee. We've got apologies from Dinesh Sinha, our Chief Medical Officer, and also apologies from Raghu Rajan, our GP member, but Dr. Rani Dillon is deputising for Raghu today. So, as we have at least 3 executive members, 3 non-executive members and 3 partner members present, I can confirm that the board is quorate and that we can make decisions today. So if you just record that in minutes, please, Eric, that would be great. So, if we could just move through the agenda, please. The next item is then declarations of interest. It's on page number 7. Can I just check if there are any new declarations of interest from anyone present today? Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Just to declare that my son started the graduate training programme followed by NHS England, but has placements in Sussex.
Excellent. Well, I hope that goes well.
Thank you.
So, can we add that one to the register of interest, please, Harry? Were there any other interests that anyone needs to declare? I'm not seeing any more, so we'll therefore say the register of interest is correct. Having considered the declarations against the agenda, my conclusion is that all of the interests are manageable and we do not need to take any further mitigation steps, such as asking board members to leave for specific items on today's agenda. Can I just check that the board's content with that as an approach? Seeing nods around the room, so that's okay. So therefore we can carry on. So, page number 11, please. That's the draft minutes of the last meeting. Can I just first of all check that these are accurate record of the last meeting from everyone's recollection? I'm seeing nods around the table. So we're being asked to approve these minutes, so can I therefore approve them? Again, nods around the table, so Kerry, if we can just record in the minutes, please, that the draft minutes are now approved as the formal record of the meeting on the 5th of July. If we just move on to page number 27, we've got the action log there, and the action log includes 12 actions from previous meetings. 11 of them are proposed for closure, and the second action on the review of general practice, the partnership in Mid-Sussex, is being progressed but not yet complete. Can I just check that everyone is content with those proposals? Okay, I'm seeing nods around the table. So therefore we can close the 11 actions that have been proposed for closure, and we'll revisit the second action when that has been completed at the next meeting. That's okay. So that's the formal actions. Can I just check if there were any other matters arising from the last meeting that anybody wants to raise? No? Okay, that's great. So let's move on then, please. So let's move on to the first substantive item today, the Chief Executive's report. Adam, as Chief Executive, I'll hand over to you. It's on page number 31. You can assume you've read the papers, but are there any key highlights that you'd like to bring to the board's attention?
Thank you, Chair. So, as our Chair said, I shouldn't be read, but I want to see my few points in my opinion, if I can. So first of all, to recognise first of all the lessons learned from the Cameras of Chest Hospital Trust. And I think we all recognise that when we had the announcement of what happened in that organisation, left us all saddened and rather shocked about what that would mean for the NHS. There will be a number of lessons learned across the NHS on the back of this. We're working very closely as an organisation, both internally but with our partner organisations, about how we therefore take that piece forward. And there are colleagues, both in our quality team and also through our assurance committees, will be looking at that in due course. But it was important that we highlight that issue as a collective board at the beginning of today's meeting. The report also covers a number of key areas that are working in the system. I need to draw the attention though, I think next to the significant impact that industrial action has had to our wider health and care system. I cannot underscore highly enough what the impact that is giving to organisations, both from a morale perspective for those who are involved in the strikes, for those who are trying to manage the strikes, and how we're trying to prepare for them and recover from them. If there has been significant numbers of strike actions we've had to deal with as a system, and whilst we respect everybody's option to strike, we have to also recognise the impact that is having on our patients in terms of us having to reschedule their appointments and their activities. We work very closely across our system. I want to thank all of the partners who are constantly managing a set of an instance of our EPR responses for that, and I think we're doing it well, but I think it's easy for us to say we're doing it well and it's therefore a normal thing. This is a very abnormal thing that we're dealing with in terms of the amount of activity and the impact that's having across the wider health care system. I feel assured, however, by how we work together to manage it, but I think we are also seeking a solution on this as quickly as possible so that we can move forward across the NHS. Within the report, though, we also covered off some of the other areas that we've been focusing on. So you've seen, I personally, but the wider team, done many service visits, but I wanted to also draw attention to some of the positive things that are happening across our system too. So I'm really pleased by the new IROC service we've put in place in Horsham. For people who live locally or work locally, they will know that there were significant issues about children's mental health services in that area, and we really believe that will start to give a response to those particular challenges that we've seen across that part of the patch. We're also really pleased that we've seen progression really in terms of us being given capital funding to work in University Hospital Sussex to support them with their emergency pressures that they're seeing in its current position. And we're progressing well in our reconfigurations for cardiology and ophthalmology and stroke across our system. I'm also really research in terms of our diagnostics engineers crawling, so that gives a sense, I think, that we are going to make the changes in line with our shared delivery plan and operational pressures that we see across our system. Since we last met in public, we've also had to look across the NHS estate again for the RAC issues that we're trying to therefore review, and we're doing a series of continual checks about what is the state of all of our buildings. And it's really important that's not just our large NHS trust, it's also our primary care estate across the full primary care family, so make sure we don't have any areas that we feel unsure about. We did hold in primary care across the whole estate profile a review in January that didn't give us any cause for concern, but we just felt we need to do that again just to make sure there was nowhere that we were concerned about going forward. We've also put into this report for the first time a bit of an update for you on what we're doing in relation to our Care Quality Commission inspections across the wider portfolio. that tends to be covered through our patient experience committee, but we thought it was important that you saw that. And then lastly, we've also given you a sense about where our provider assurance one-to-one discussions have been held. And lastly, because it's not in our report because it was written before we held the meeting, we held our quarter-one assurance meeting with NHS England as part of an ICB, and that was a very positive conversation. Always work to be done, and we'll update the board formally about the feedback we get from them or a letter in due course. But very happy to pause there and take any questions, Jane.
Well, thank you, Adam, and I think that's a really comprehensive report, so thank you for sharing that with me. Before I ask questions from board members, I'd just like to express a few some personal reflections about the wicked crimes conducted in Chester. I think as a father and as a grandfather, as well as someone who used to live in Chester, I cannot begin to imagine the torment and the grief that the families that have been affected have been going through recently. And I think I'd just like to record my personal condolences to all the families involved. But we should also remember that it has an impact on our staff as well, the staff in those areas as well, particularly. But I don't think anyone in the NHS has been unaffected by this particular situation. It is important that we remain proportionate, and I think even though the vast majority of care in the NHS is genuinely excellent, this case does demonstrate that things can go wrong if we don't listen to our staff and if we don't listen to our patients. So I think as a board, we do need to ask ourselves the hard questions of what are we doing to ensure that similar incidents are not happening here in Sussex. In the full knowledge, of course, that NHS Sussex is accountable for commissioning services and our NHS providers are responsible for delivering safe and effective services and safely. So I thought it might just be helpful if I could maybe just ask our Chief Nursing Officer, Alison Cannon, just to summarise what NHS Sussex is doing in response to this particular case.
Thank you, Chair, and recognise the significance of this case. I think probably what's important to remind the board is that we, as a board and an executive, have got patient safety, experience and quality absolutely at the forefront of all the decisions that we make. I think in terms of what we have been undertaking as an executive following the Countess of Cheshire case, is we had a CEO-led discussion in relation to what our views and feelings were about this, but also what we were actually practically doing as an organisation in response to some of the initial learning that was coming out. I think it's important to recognise, though, we had already recognised that we needed to employ a freedom to speak up guardian, and we already had that in process, and I'm really pleased to say that Cassandra Blowers took up post at the end of September. She is working very closely with our staff, but also with our staff networks to make sure that people feel safe to raise concerns and speak up where they may find things that are not necessarily as they would want them to be. We make sure that we, through our staff surveys, also ask our staff to say how they feel, whether they feel safe to speak up, and we're recording that on every time we take these surveys. I think it's probably also important to say that following the events at the Countess of Cheshire, NHS England wrote out to all integrated care boards and all providers asking them to consider their freedom to speak up processes internally. And of course, we will be following that through our NHS Sussex assurance processes, through our quality review meetings and our provider assurance meetings. And probably Sue may want to just say something in terms of how we gain assurance through our patient experience committee, through our quality and safety and safeguarding work that we do across the system and internally.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. So Sue, as the chair of our patient experience committee, how does the committee gain assurance on these safety-related incidents and unexplained deaths?
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Alison. Yeah, we gain assurance in a variety of ways. To start with, we lead patient experience committee in quite a transparent and open way to encourage people to have an open, frank discussion, and we invite a lot of different staff into that committee so they can be involved in that discussion. We examine a range of data, including patient safety data, risk data, mortality data, safeguarding data, and of course patient experience data, including patient stories. And a host of other data which we look for trends and themes in that data. The new patient safety incident response framework is currently being rolled out across the system, which is improving the way that all NHS services respond to incidents. And you'll be aware that we had a board seminar around that framework a few months ago. We benchmark data locally and nationally, and if we require additional assurance in any area, we do deep dives, and the actions as a result of that come back to the Patient Experience Committee. We're aware that there's a really clear governance structure in place, and we have assurance of the many oversight and touch point meetings that we have with our providers. As a direct result of the Lucy Letby trial, there's obviously an independent inquiry, and so we'll wait for the recommendations that come out of that. But in the meantime, I've asked Alison and the team if we can have a look back at previous recommendations that have come out from previous inquiries and bring some additional assurance of that, that our providers are improving and put those recommendations in place. So we'll bring that through back as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, both. I think that's a very helpful summary. It's clear we're taking this seriously, but I don't think we should be complacent. And I'd like to propose that as a board that we discuss this in more detail at our board development on 1st of November, and then we can feed back to the next public board, what the outcome of that is. I want to make sure that we're completely sure that we're doing everything we can as a board to keep patients safe, but also to listen to patients, to listen to staff. And that feels really important because we must learn from this situation. So that's all I particularly wanted to mention on that. But does that work for everybody? Okay. So, Kerry, if we could just take an action then for the board to review the incidents at Chester to ensure that we're doing everything we can to address patient safety here in Sussex. Thank you. Okay, so if we go back to Adam's report, there's many other issues on the agenda there. Can I just ask if there are any other specific questions? Ash.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Adam, for the report. I was interested, fantastic, the work that's happened around the IROC scheme and what it's created, and the same around the diagnostic plans that are in place. My question is that as a result of those, though, you're identifying probably more people needing more treatment and needing more access to resource. How well are we able to then move people into those services that provide them with the care beyond the, yes, you need some help, to we are going to be able to help you?
Let's a dilemma of questions in terms of unmet need versus. First of all, I think let's work for 4 key principles as an ICB. Our job is to identify health inequalities and where people haven't got access to provide that with them. So therefore, it's a moral but also a legal responsibility for us to do that. I think what you're highlighting is therefore, do we have a capacity issue for these people? Therefore, when we identify them, I would suggest that when we look at the profile of the young people in Horsham, they are known to services already and are not accessing them in the most effective way. So, for example, one of the reasons why we wanted to access them quickly was that a number of those children were waiting for quite some time on a CAMS waiting list or waiting for an inpatient medicine. And our view was, having taken view of all the professionals and the clinical leaders in that area, was actually access something early should therefore help to prevent those going forward. We're also hearing from education colleagues about how they're holding significant numbers of children without access to services, and we are seeing them therefore present to NHS in a much more escalated level. So we feel in intervening early, we should be able to bend the demand curve. It doesn't mean, though, we shouldn't be working on the CAMS waiting times, and we've asked our mental health trust for a recovery plan that brings their waiting time back into a different level. The approach that they're taking is looking at all best practice models across the country. There are very different ways in which they can access their services, and they would admit quite publicly that they've got a significant modernisation programme to do regarding their CAMS pathway. So that's their element. On the diagnostic elements, the reality for us is where we place that diagnostic hub is for a part of the community that have been underserved in terms of the numbers of the level of access they've got to diagnostic services. I think what we're looking to tie together with our population outcomes committee is in investing there, what does that therefore mean for the long-term health and quality gain that we get in the space for that? What we are really fortunate in that part of the pathway, though, should those individuals be identified as requiring access to care, because we work to quite a high level in terms of our activity levels against the national funding formula for payment. if those people require onward secondary care, we should be funded for the work above tariff for that. So therefore, we feel that in getting as many people through the diagnostic pathway, should they need something else, we've got the financial ability to therefore treat them. The challenge for that, though, is having the available workforce to treat them. So our planned care board is doing some further modelling about, once we've got the financial model in place, do we actually have the right workforce to get that right? But later on our agenda, we have got a planned care update that should hopefully start to tie up this for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ash. For Steve, and I'll bring the book.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Adam. I've got a couple of questions. The first is to do with the implementation of the My Health app. It is what considerations are we taking into accessibility to ensure that the population who are already using the app are not further disadvantaged from its benefits?
So there were 5 key elements we were asked to look at as part of the planning around for health inequalities, and digital exclusion is one of those areas. So what we've asked the health authorities to do is to ensure that where we have got digital exclusion, what is the evidence-based plan to make that happen. We don't yet have that plan in place, but the health authorities team are working with the planned care team to work out how best that can therefore be taken forward. There are many solutions, as you know, well, Preston, about how we therefore can tackle digital exclusion. We need to really focus on the only service we can offer for some of our population. So what I'll ask is that we take that action back to the Population Outcomes Committee, and therefore we're able to take that.
Okay, I know the second question, but can I come to Paul first?
Yeah, it's actually following on from Ash's question about community diagnostic centre, and as a Horsham resident, I welcome the centre to be set in Crawley, and having access tests at both Crawley and East Surrey. The ability to access tests more easily at Crawley, I think, will be a big benefit to not just the population of Crawley, but the surrounding areas, including Horsham. But my question was, in terms of the community diagnostic centres we've had already, what kind of impact have they made in terms of numbers of tests that are being processed and the better outcomes that consequently people will experience in onward care and so on?
So I'll give a global update, and perhaps then Joe, as the partner that leads one of our diagnostics, can therefore give an update post-elect, if that's okay. So first of all, you'll see in our planned care performance, we benchmark particularly well in diagnostics. And that has been in no small part due to the additional capacity we put in all key sites. The vast majority operate well above the expected activity levels. There are 2 that don't, for 2 different reasons. One, we're not completely convinced the location completely works for the community. And the second, but it still works from the community to understand that. And the second, there was one particular issue regarding not having the available kit at go line to therefore place in that building, which is therefore is delayed. But I think overwhelmingly we feel at this moment, and comparing to our statistical neighbours, we've had a very positive diagnostic position. I think Ash's earlier question is, but we still have a very long waiting list for our whole elective care. So how do we make sure we don't make that worse to get that piece right? But I think it is important that we all go with the mantra of let's get as many people diagnosed, we know what we're dealing with, so therefore get them navigated in the right care setting. But Joe, you lead one, so perhaps you've got a unique perspective to give to the board.
Yeah, so I was going to start with the good thing is that we want people to come forwards and to access care, and the earlier people come forwards, the earlier they get a diagnosis, the better outcomes they can have to get. So volumes of work is a good thing. Historically, we might have worried about that, but volumes of work is a good thing to have better outcomes. The way one in Bexhill's working is really favourable in terms of the local community. We're getting high volumes through, so they're really productive. They're designed, they're purpose-built. We've converted a car showroom, which would have been an empty community facility that is now there for that local population with good parking access. And I appreciate not everybody has a car, but the overwhelming feedback is around the parking. In terms of the services, they are high volume, they're highly productive, and because they're off site, they're not impacted by, or off the acute site, they're not impacted by urgent cases coming in. So we've brought down, I don't understand, but we've significantly brought down waiting times. We've got, it's given us enough capacity to clear those backlogs and have spare capacity. So we haven't we've still got more room, we can expand our hours and across the days of the week, subject to workforce, so that we can then start increasing the activity through where perhaps patients and public haven't yet to come forward through to primary care and then through to referrals. So we will have more capacity than we've had before. But essentially the waiting lists are starting to come down, and importantly waiting times are coming down significantly.
Okay, I think that's really helpful. So, Christina, I know you've got another question, but I think we're also running out of time. So I can maybe suggest you pick that one up offline. Maybe the second question, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I think as far as this particular paper is concerned, on this agenda, we're asked to note the update. So on that basis, can I ask for consent to note? Okay, on that basis, Carrie, if we can please note our report with our thanks. Thank you very much. And that takes us on to the next paper, which is a report from the Executive Committee. Again, Adam, back to you, page 45. I assume you've read it. Any key points to highlight?
Yes, so we've, since we last met in public, in terms of our governance processes, there have been 3 executive committees, 3rd of July, 7th of August, 4th of September, and item 23 of my report summarises the escalation to field brief. So first thing, I hope this gives a summary to you as board members and the public of what we talk about at an executive committee level, so you know the kind of things that we are covering in that space. But there are 6 main areas to highlight to the board, which I just want to be clear about. So we had a discussion through our commissioning group, which is a subgroup of the expo that was highlighted to me as chair, but I felt important to highlight to you, just about the general public sector finances, and therefore how a number of partner organisations are coming to NHS Sussex requesting additional funding, or for us to fund things that we have historically not done that. We are working in a very positive way with all those areas, but it is an important feature, the current fiscal environment we're working in, that we are currently dealing with that for all of our partners at this current point. The second bit, I think we've covered off, but we of course had an executive discussion about the Council of Chester, and I think we're very clear that we will make sure that as part of our process and our executive responsibilities, we'll make sure we pick up who provided assurance. Which goes on to another area that I think we're very clear about. We want to make sure that we are leading our provider assurance meetings about patient safety, patient experience, but also looking at mortality, morbidity data, so we're very, very clear as a system where we sit to that, so we can spot things should there need to be. We do that through a number of our quality oversight discussions, so I want the board to be assured that happens, but I think our view is we should probably amplify that more in all of our discussions across our system as we go forward. The other key part is important to recognise. We are working through our change group about our 30% running cost allocation reduction that starts to take effect from the 1st of April 2024. And I think the team are doing a fantastic job engaging the organisation, but there are 2 areas to highlight. One, that has had a morale hit to the organisation because we have told the organisation that is a reality we're facing. And secondarily, there is a responsibility for us to still execute all of our statutory responsibilities. We have to have quite direct and open conversations with our partners, particularly our providers, about things we will no longer be able to do on their behalf, because of course we are reducing the organisation size by a 1/3. So it's an important bit that we're clear about how we frame that with all of our colleagues. We endorse the people plan, but I'll cover that later when we have a discussion as a board on that. And I think we recognise still in that meeting the very hard work that we're all trying to do in relation to industrial action. So I'll pause there, but they were just the area we felt as a committee were important to highlight.
Great. And just to be clear, Adam, these are information items for us in terms of escalations. There's no action we want the board to take today specifically.
No, I think the only key area that we discussed was about the BAF and working closely with the audit and risk committee about how that oversees the production of action.
Okay, colleagues. So a clear report. Any specific questions?
Sorry.
No need to apologise.
There's one comment in here that says the Expo recognises the challenge that NHS Sussex faces in meeting running cost allowances goals and has asked the change group to look at further mitigation to help with progress. And I wanted some assurance around the fact that we've got the target operating model and the plans that are being put around there. But does this impact on how that operates and what you're doing in the short term and the consequence it has on long-term solutions?
Okay, I'll try to brief my answer because there's a lot I can say on this match. So our approach has been we will have a target operating model for the organisation that is adjacent and appropriate for what we're trying to deliver as a system, and also what we're trying to deliver as an organisation. It is important to say our system development is not where it needs to be to fully enact the target operating model, yet we still have to reduce the organisation by 30%. So I think there is a risk, but I think it's important to highlight that we can therefore make a decision today that has a direct unintended consequence on the future model for the system. How we're trying to mitigate against that is we're trying to be really clear and purposeful about what the top leadership structure of the organisation looks like and how that will execute its functions to deliver each of the SDP priorities. What I would be very clear with the organisation as a board and the system, we have a 5-year plan that we've all signed up to, so that is the plan. And the plan is integrated neighbourhood teams are the primary transformation element for our system, with a place that oversees them, with our providers collaborating. So that is as we're describing the target operating model. So everything we do has to tick one or all of those boxes. What the risk is, if suddenly we have to change the strategy, then the organisation will not be set up to respond to that quickly, and it will be smaller. But I feel confident in the work that the teams are doing, that they're in the right space for this. But I think it is important that the CCGs in their history and NHS Sussex was able to be quite agile for local changes. We just don't have the organisational bandwidth to do that going forward. So I think that's why I'm really pleased. We've got an agreed 5-year plan. We've got an agreed way to deliver it, but we can't do much tweaking with that and expect an agile response quickly at this current point. And that would be the greatest risk that we're dealing with as an organisation. And I think it is important to underscore again that that has had a much more impact on the morale of the organisation. And we're working very closely with staff groups to therefore make sure they're feeling heard, being listened, and feeling we can therefore drive forward the change.
Sorry, can I just in terms of that, because you said that what it says in there is the running cost allowance you're struggling with I assume for this year financial year, and are there implications that you're going to have to do something in year that then has a consequence? I know you got the plan is not to, but is there something we've got? How are you going to meet the target for this year?
So we're confident we can deliver our target for this year. That Hannah will comment on that a bit later. We feel in a good position for that. And I'm not highlighting a risk for that. I'm just saying it is a challenge to make that happen with all of the other challenges we have to deal with as an organisation. I think it's really important though, we have to do things in year to have cash release and benefit from the 1st of April. The longer we delay that, the more cash releasing decisions you've got to take towards the year. So therefore, we will need to make decisions this year that take effect from the 1st of April. So therefore, that's why we're having to do things quite carefully, seeing that going forward. But Hannah, do you want to perspective on the running costs this year?
Yeah, very similar. So of course we monitor this very, very carefully, and of course as we're planning part of the operating model, we have held a lot of vacancies. So that's actually helping to do that's making sure is ensuring we can deliver the running cost allowance this year, but also means that it's limiting the reductions to posts that we'll have to make going forward. But as Adam says, it's working now on the looking at the non-pay, the structures, our offices, looking at everything and getting ahead of the game now, so that we can make sure we start to take the costs out for the 1st of April.
Okay, thank you for that. But just building on that question, Adam, obviously at time of uncertainty, you mentioned the morale issue. Can you just briefly give a little more colour about what staff engagement we're doing to actually support staff during this difficult time?
Yeah, sure. So I'll stand it off, then I'll do what you want to that. So we hold a weekly webinar with all the staff, and each of the directors therefore meet their team on a weekly basis. And I monitor that quite carefully to make sure that that's there for the place. And that's to therefore create an up and down communication channel with the organisation, which you will see from our previous staff survey, we have been improving for quite some time. And really the overall trajectory of the organisation of staff morale has been going in an upward trajectory against many ICBs, not in the same position to you will report we discussed a staff survey this year, but we were in that place. So I think up until that point we felt we were going in the right direction. We'd set up our staff networks, we set up a relationship with our joint staff site committee, and we felt we had a pretty open culture, and we put in, as Alison's covered earlier, our previous speaker processes. So that was our approach. I think at this point though, we've had to deliver last week a quite clear message to the organisation about the number of posts for refuge changes. And each of the chief officers are now be reviewing again their engagement strategy with each of the staff as they go forward. So each will have been seen again by the end of tomorrow in terms of the approach they're taking. And then Mark is therefore working very closely as Chief People Officer on the further cultural touch points we need to look at as we go through this change journey. I think it is important though that we are very frank that we do expect a reduction in morale. The challenge that I'm giving the exec team is, as you see the reduction, are we clear what we're doing to hold it to the level it needs to be? And through our next exec committee, we're going to do a forward look about staff morale, so therefore I can point to what are the actions we're taking that keep us in that improvement trajectory. But I think it is important to recognise this is a very challenging time for a group of staff who were in 7 organisations 2 years ago that were therefore asked to be into 1 and now asked to be reduced by a third. So let's own the fact that actually we have put them as an NHS through a heck of a lot, and we have to still work closely with that.
Okay, so we're going to need to move on. One quick question.
I'm just recognising that, recognising you, Adam, and the rest of the executive team with trying to reduce waste, industrial action, organisational change, etc., as well as the extra meetings that you're putting in terms of scrutiny of sequencing, inspection reports, etc. My question is, how are you and the executive team managing all of those priorities, and how is your morale?
I think first of all, you've outlined us to do this quite well. It's my appraisal. I think. So let's be really clear. My exec team, who I'm very proud of, we were not expecting to be managing this situation so early on in the tenure of the ICB. So I therefore think what brought us all to work here was to improve health outcomes, take things forward, but also the operating environment we're working within is just so constrained at the moment. So I think as a team, I think we have had to take a view about our own leadership and what we need to do to take strength from each other and also be resilient. Of course, you would imagine I have direct contact with each of the individual members of my team about how we therefore make that happen, and the colleagues will know how those conversations go, both in terms of support and also challenge. But we're also working about how we have to navigate something across an NHS leadership community that no one's done before. So we have also sourced some external support to help us to make sure we're able to have challenge of each other, but also to therefore make sure we're able to navigate this significant change that is quite profound for the system, because also our job is to steward the NHS into its new future, which is about integrated neighbour teams, places, private gravities. That's also going to value on top of everything else. But I feel we're in a good place. We do have moments where things are tricky, and we had tricky moments with each other, but the power of a team is that we come back together and they're all smiling because they know what their tricky moments are, I think. But yeah, I think we're working well together, but we keep it under constant managing.
Do any of the executive committee colleagues want to comment on that? Amy?
Just one key thing I think to remember, and also just to recognise that although the staff of this organisation have been through quite significant change, they, in many of our interactions, are quite focused on why they're here, and they're here to make a difference for the population of Sussex. And I think we've been very open and honest in our interactions with them, and I think they've welcomed that. Decreasing morale is probably normal in these situations, but I think they are also focused on the fact that they're here to do a good job and they want to do it for the population of Sussex. And I think that's why they're recognising.
Good. Okay, I think that feels like an appropriate point to draw this item to a close, if that's okay. So the board's asked to note the issues escalated to the board's attention and to take assurance from the decision that the executive committee made. So I suggest that we do just that. So you can note the report again with thanks. So that leads us on to, and Adam, you've already sort of in some ways mentioned this several times already, the shared delivery plan priorities. Lisa Emery, you're our Chief Transformation, Innovation and Digital Officer. You can assume we've read your report in terms of progress, but any key points you want to bring to the board's attention?
Absolutely, so I'll keep this brief, thank you, Chair. So the paper's here for the board to note for information and insurance. It's setting out, since the publication of our shared delivery plan in July, progress that we've made in terms of our approach to change commitments and progress in delivery, and some of the key challenges that Adam's already very clearly articulated in the System Oversight Board
have spent considerable time considering how best to mitigate an approach. So it gives a brief update for board members across our 4 levels. So as Adam stated, what we're doing across system, and 5 collaborative place and integrated community teams, and the approach and the progress we've made in terms of establishing very robust governance around the delivery of our shared delivery hospitals. So I'll brief that. I think Adam's really very well articulated the challenge that we face in delivering that.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. Colleagues, are there any specific questions or comments anyone wants to make? Ash?
You talk about the creation of population health profiles for each of the 16 ICDs and to develop a core offer. What's the timescale for doing that? And how do you make sure that what we don't do is create health inequalities between different parts of those? Because if you look at the individual population, they may be different, but they bleed into each other. So there is a risk you actually exacerbate some inequalities. So what you do to prevent them?
So Lisa, would you like Amy to maybe help?
I'm
As the senior responsible officer for the community.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So in terms of the timescales, as I think this board signed up a few months ago, the timescales for the delivery of the actual population health profiles is December, and we're working to that timescale. We're working with colleagues from across the system, so public health colleagues, healthcare colleagues, but also voluntary sector partners to develop that, because we're trying to develop profiles that look at, I guess, both the outcomes of the population, but also some of about what we know about how people live within our communities. So it's trying to take a rounded approach to how we take a view of both how a population is living, but also view that is having one-on-one outcomes. Clearly, we're doing this at the Sussex level, so we should have a good picture of everything that's happening across the whole of the population. And the idea of developing the core offer and specifying that we will develop a core offer for each integrated community team is that we recognise that it's important for everyone in Sussex to know what the offer is and to understand what services will be in their patch, but then also recognising the fact that there might be variation in how that offer is delivered depending on the inequalities that already exist within the community. So that is why in addition to the core offer, there will be, I guess, local variation around how to best respond to the population need, and I guess address the fact that you said there will be variation in how people are impacted by our currently delivering services to.
I suppose the risk is you can fix some health inequalities, but you create new ones, and it's about how do you make sure that the consequence of one doesn't create an unforeseen expectation.
I suppose there's also just a point maybe we bring Alison Challenger in, actually, as Director of Public Health. What's the role of public health in supporting the creation of these population health profiles in our integrated community teams?
We've already published these profiles in terms of their demographics, but it is developing in a dynamic piece of work. So where we're trying to consult widely in the communities. So this is not just about what the NHS is going to do, it's developing in with local authorities, voluntary sector partners, and various other very important community understandings that we need to build into these profiles. So I do see them as community profiles, and hopefully some of the risks that you mentioned there may be brought through from the different stakeholders, where we can look to see if there is any potential impact in other areas. So if you address one thing, what does it do in terms of the others? So I think.
Okay. I think Adam, you want to add something?
It feels really slow, doesn't it? Because that's what everything you say. But the reality is, it's easy to do the analysis for the data, but actually, what we're trying to say to the community, as we've agreed by our STP, what actually are the things we're all going to say are the population profiles, and doing that well and doing it right takes time. So often Stephen and I might look at the programme planning going, that could just move a bit faster, but actually you can push it really fast. But if we haven't got the right community engagement about this is what we should be working on, with the people that we're going to ask to fundamentally change how they work together, we're sort of going to fall at those hurdles. But I think our challenge is making sure that we hit that deadline to get it right. But I think it is about a community co-production piece. And if you can get it right, I think it sets the system in really great stead for future years. If we get it wrong, we could easily alienate core people that want to transform our services. Hence why often when it first announced in December felt a long time off, but actually the emerging work looks really exciting, and we say to the board, I think, in public shape, once it's done, what it's saying about opportunity.
But do it right, I think, it's got to be the principle of do it once, and that takes time if you want to involve people. Christina, a final question from you?
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Lisa. Just touching on the community engagement and involving community throughout the process. My question is that what is the initial feedback we are getting from the communities in terms of their confidence in the SDP achieving its end?
So we've had something, and Tom might want to comment on this as well. We've done some engagement work through April to July around the approach we've taken to the shared delivery plan and started to consider some of that feedback. Probably, Tom, you might want to just give a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So in terms of, we've had some really good feedback. We carried out a public survey in Q3 last year, and we asked around confidence levels around plans in place. Do they think we've got plans in place for them and their communities? We then carried out the same survey during the summer, and we actually saw a 20% increase in people actually feeling we now have plans in place, that we're more confident in plans in place. And actually the areas that we are focusing is right for them and their community, which is really positive. Clearly what we now need to do is deliver those. But additionally, we've got a working with people in community strategy, which we report through our patient experience committee. And that is, a lot of that is around empowering our communities. And I think across our population of communities, there is a real sense that actually we are now listening much more with them, but more importantly, involving them, not just asking them what their views are, but actually involving them in trying to have solutions. And I think that has been very much welcomed. Next step is how do we actually do that and make sure.
Okay, thank you both. I must admit, I personally love the ambition that we've got in the shared delivery plan, but I think there are risks to it. And maybe I'd just ask you just to summarise briefly what you see as the biggest risks to delivering this.
Okay, so I'm going to put, so I've said quite a lot in today's meeting already about the pressure the service is under. So I'm going to put that all to one side, but please know I'm stating everything is very, very compressed and busy. But if I put that to one side for a second and just look at, we agreed a strategy, what are the risks as we see it? I think the first one is, if I go at each of the layers, getting the INT model wrong by not engaging people is a significant risk, I think, in our system. So if we don't have districts, boroughs, if we don't have the right housing organisations involved, if we don't have the B2C involved, who are really, really vibrant, but may have historically felt a bit done unto by the NHS, I think the integrated neighbourhood model could be less successful than it wants to be. That's the first bit. In that space, though, as an integrated care board, there is a responsibility for the NHS on its own, first of all, to integrate. So therefore, there is a risk that NHS itself does not what it has said it will do, which would be the organisations coming together who are responsible for the care in integrated neighbourhoods and doing that well. That's, I think, a really, really important stage. With that, we've got a public sector backdrop where we've got a number of our statutory partners that are struggling both financially to therefore make ends meet. So that is a reality for our system that can get in the way. We need some mitigation for that. The other key part I think I would also state is this is a cultural shift that is significant. And we had a change paper to this board some time ago, I think in private, about what change would look like. And my current read of the system is we've got a good commitment to the objectives, a good year one set of things to make happen. But now organisations, particularly in the NHS, are going to have to learn to fundamentally collaborate with each other in ways they've never done before. And I think that is quite difficult at this current point for some organisations to see. The way of mitigating against that is myself and Stephen have agreed that we'll meet with all chief executives and chairs of NHS organisations about how do we do this well together. But across the country, we have seen other NHS organisations lead this change, and we need to see our NHS providers start and take that leadership journey forward. Because remember, it's all their staff who are asking to do this. So they need to be the ones that are driving this together to make that happen going forward. So do I feel concerned we achieve it? No, not at all. But are there things for us to land objectively this year for cultural shift? Yes, there are. And we need to be quite purposeful about those. And also not be too afraid to say it's not working. So how do we get that working to therefore make sure we don't sort of talk ourselves up when things are fundamentally not yet integrated together. So that's probably my key sense on this.
Okay, thank you for that. And is there any action that you recommend the board needs to take right now?
I think in our seminar discussions as we go forward, I think we now need to be really clear about our emerging principles for the planning round for next year. So for example, it's in my view we should now be looking to commission acute services for a set of outcomes to ask them to work together. We should be commissioning our community providers and find that our mental health services too for an integrated model. And we should also be commissioning our primary care services for a greater form of collaboration and to be quite formalised about what we're expecting in regards to that going forward. I think that will help us in terms of it not just being an ethereal thing, but we kind of contracting permission for it. And the last piece, I was really heartened by a discussion I had one of our campus chief executives team this week. I think also we need to also consider what is our joint commissioning responsibilities with our local government partners that are separate to the delivery responsibilities of the NHS family. So I think all those things need to have a good discussion with the board about to therefore make sure that you're able to see the line of sight of that in our operating plan for next year and how we look to seek change 24-25.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really helpful. So we're asked to note this report. So again, we just note that report with facts, but I think this is a subject we're going to come back to. It's the reality. So I think that's how we'll deal with it.